Hello, here we are at Module 3. We have our same objectives and our agenda we're moving through. So now we're going to talk about the narrative of the couch and the narrative of the other phases. So we know that each of the four constituents were comprised of 3 or more categories: emotional, interpersonal, and cognitive, physiological, and that 50 different treatment milestones were identified. So in cognitive dissonance, we're going to look at these in a couple of different ways now. So I really want you to be able to appreciate the work, the psychological work that our consumers are going through. So the emotional themes are embarrassment, fear, frustration, inability to handle stress, and loss of self-confidence. The cognitive themes in cognitive dissonance are confusion and a fear of saying something wrong. Interpersonally, it's hard to go out in public and hard to be around people. And physically, they're talking about using drugs and alcohol, and it just requires too much energy. So we need to resolve several of these, not all, before this person's really going to be able to move successfully into later phases. So I've been working with a young man for about 3 years, and he's just stuck. And, he's got all these ideas, but never fulfills anything. So I pulled out the MAP treatment guide, and I said, let's look at these. He's actually achieved a lot in the second, third, and fourth phases. Well, not the fourth so much, but second and third, he understands his illness. He can go out in public, but he's stuck 38 years old, still living at home. And when we got through the themes, the milestones, we could see he's got all of these, except he's no longer using drugs and alcohol, that are still unmet milestones. So he's picking up on fear. Fear is his big thing, so we're developing some goals on that. Okay, in Insight, or at the bus depot, emotionally learning how to cope with life, cognitively trying to figure out their own thoughts, conduct their own reality checks, getting control of symptoms, recognizing limitations, and just getting used to it. Interpersonally, learning to communicate with others. And physically, this is this year process to try to get some energy back. At the mall, a lot of milestones, because this is where the person's really interacting with society, right? So emotionally, the importance of having a positive initial hospital experience, dependable support systems, something to do with their time, feeling reassured, encouraged, knowing that that treatment environment is safe, not too much quiet time, please, and having hope. Cognitively, something to distract me from these symptoms, accepting the need for treatment, learning I'm not the only one with this illness, getting back to what I used to do, thinking positive, and being given choices. Interpersonally, have someone listen to me, understand me, talk to me about me. I need confidence in you as my counselor or therapist. Please be honest with reality. Explain things to me, talk to me about general things, and I need to talk about what happened when I first got sick. Physically, finding the right medicine, taking care of their body, and having a routine. This is an enormous amount of work to plow through this. And finally, in ordinariness, not too many milestones, because they've achieved so much prior to this phase. But being able to think about the future, accomplish my life goals, have my own place to live, manage symptoms, finish my education, get a job, do what other people do. And like one of the participants said, I just want a house, a spouse, a car, and a job, like everybody else. So we can get a grasp here of the enormity of these milestones and why it takes a long time to achieve them. But I want to present these to you now in a different way. So I think you'll be able to appreciate the complexity in a different way. So when we look at the emotional work. There's 17 milestones over these 2 to 3 years. That doesn't sound like it's so much, right? But look at the work that your clients are going through. And you're going to hear, I'm repeating myself over and over because I want you to get these milestones in the back of your head. So, on the couch, again, embarrassment, fear, frustration, inability to handle stress, and loss of self-confidence. Then they move into learning how to cope with life. Whoa, then it goes into the importance of that first initial episode, reassurance and encouragement, feeling safe in my treatment, support system that's dependable, don't make me be alone too much, help me find something to do with my time, I want to be around people, and I have hope. To being able to think about the future, accomplishing goals, and having my own place to live. So what happens to so many of our consumers here is that they're discharged and they're still on the couch, but these are the goals over here. You know, you're supposed to be planning your future and thinking about life goals, and you need independent living. Well, those aren't bad goals at all. I'm not passing judgment on that, but it's just not the right time. So unless a person has learned how to cope and they've been able to get over some of the frustration and fear, don't expect folks to be able to go over here. So your treatment plan hopefully will look a little bit different and talk about client will talk about things that are embarrassing, will overcome certain fears, etc. Cognitively, okay? On the couch, they're confused, afraid of saying something wrong. At the bus depot now, trying to figure out my thoughts, conduct reality checks, control my symptoms, recognize limitations, and I gotta get used to this thing. I don't think it's going away. At the mall, now I'm trying to distract myself. And now I've got this thing. I've got to deal with it. I need to accept treatment. I got to get back to what I used to do. I need some choices. I need to figure things out, think positive. And then to managing symptoms, finishing education, becoming employed. That's a lot. So when you look at moving from confusion and fear of saying the wrong thing all the way over here to getting a job, that's a boatload of accomplishment. So breaking it down like this, hopefully, will help you be able to see the fruits of your labor and the important work that each and every one of you is doing. Interpersonally, there's 11 milestones. Let's look at them. So, on the couch, I don't want to go out in public. I don't want to be around people. The bus depot, I might acknowledge that you said something to me. But boy, when I'm at the mall, I want to talk to you. I'm going to initiate and maintain meaningful conversation because someone's listening to me and understands me, and I have confidence in you. And people are honest with reality, and they're telling me, they're helping me understand things, and they're talking to me about real life. And I'm going to talk to you about how important it is for you to help somebody else when they're first getting ill. I'm going to do what other people do. So going from hard to go out in public and hard to be around people, all the way over to doing what other people do, it's enormous interpersonally. And if they can't do these, then we don't want to put people out into the workforce or get them back to school prematurely. Physiological, 6 milestones, early on in treatment generally. So here we are on the couch. Person might still be using drugs and alcohol if they can get it, and they're just absolutely exhausted, wiped out. In this phase of the bus depot, they're spending a year just trying to put it all together, right? Trying to be able to figuring out my thoughts, and trying to be able to learn to, resume taking a shower, etc. To finding the right medicine, now I'm taking care of my body, and I have a routine. And there are no milestones in ordinariness because they've been achieved. So going from being on the couch, I can't move, and using drugs and alcohol, to having a routine, taking care of my body, whew, a lot of accomplishments there. So those are those milestones broken down not only by category, but by phase. So let's take a look at what this is like for some of these consumers that were in my study. So what are some of their comments about what it was like to be on the couch? Okay, so this was a female. She said, I didn't want people to know that I was having problems. That's why I didn't go to school. I haven't been able to go out and kind of find my friends again and tell them I was sick because it was really embarrassing. So she dropped out because she was so embarrassed by what the voices were saying to her and about her. The first participant is a little bit older. She said it's scary in the beginning because when your brain doesn't work right, and when you think you're seeing something and there's nothing there, and when you start thinking about the things that are not within the norm, so to speak, it's like you can't think any other way. So it's kind of scary. So this was a person that had a really long DUP and took a long time to get her brain back. This particular client said, I was scared most of the time because the fact I didn't know what was going on in my head was really going on in the world, and not knowing that that wasn't normal and that there wasn't really these things happening to me. This was a young man that was a Hispanic young man, and he got all tied into some of the religious, cultural aspects of his ethnicity, and it got all woven in with religious ideation. So it was very scary for him. This person says, I felt powerless and terrified. It's a lot of fear. It's huge. Participant 1 again said, it's overwhelming when your brain's not working because you count on your brain to tell you what's going on in the world. When your brain's not working, it says things that aren't there, then that's like you don't make good decisions about anything. So you can just hear that frustration. This person was another male, and he said, it's really hard for me to commit to something because I'm so paranoid. Well, I think I'm going to get halfway through it, and then I'll just want to stop. Like, I don't want to do everything. I mean, I don't want to do just this. I don't want to, I want to have everything at once, but I don't know what. So you can just hear. So this is a person that's, was a year into the first episode program, and you can still see how these thoughts are hard to get organized. And these folks are in a stellar program, as we know. It just shows this amount of time that it takes to work through these milestones. This was a young man that had gotten into drugs and alcohol, pretty bad psychosis, ended up going down to a large city further south on the I-5 corridor and got in trouble with the law. He'd stolen a credit card. Luckily, he'd used that credit card and his parents could find him. And his mom actually worked for Oregon DSHS, and I did their interview in their home. And so she talked about what it was like to going from working with clients to and having her own son be in the system. He was a remarkable young man. He said, after I started getting a little better, it was hard to be out in public with my mom at the store and stuff. At the time, it was just kind of feeling like everybody knows what's going on, kind of like being different, It made it hard. It was one of those things I didn't want everybody to know and everybody thinking. It's kind of what I thought was happening. They already did. They were already thinking those things, So he was reflecting on this difficulty when you have paranoid ideation and you already think that people are reading your mind. But you want to get off the couch, but he's still on the couch. But his mom was dragging him out because she wanted him to, get back into the swing of things. And this was his internal experience. I mean, this is just, it makes your heart hurt. This young man said, I was too worried to take buses and stuff because I was afraid of being lost from here and not find my way back. With my eyes and stuff, it would look fine. I can find my way around, but in feeling and then in thinking, I was afraid I was going to get lost somewhere. And this was our young man that was working as a pizza delivery boy, but started having ghosts coming with him. He said, I was too busy with my thoughts in high school to speak any friends. I lost my friends because I lost touch with reality. I lost contact with my closest friend because I couldn't talk to her, because my thoughts wouldn't let me talk. And now what I'm going to share is, this is really heartbreaking. He was saying, I'll just read you the quote, then I'll give you the context. Something in my brain chemistry didn't let me talk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't even say excuse me to get past people very quickly. I had to wait to swallow my spit in order to get the courage to tell them excuse me so they would move out of the way. So this was his actual last day in high school before he dropped out. He was so frightened with the visual hallucinations and the auditory hallucinations that when he went to school, he wanted to get into his locker. But there were other people standing in front of his locker. He was terrified to ask them to move. So he said, I had to wait to swallow my spit to get the courage to tell them excuse me so he could get into his locker. If you were just looking at him, you would just see him say excuse me. But that was his internal lived experience. I mean, it just, like I said, it makes your heart hurt to think what people have really gone through. This young woman said, it's just the feeling of being a new person here. I had to be retaught things in a different way to clean myself and all that because I was being lazy. It was like my mom was trying to raise me again. This is this on the couch, not being able to function. And the perception was, she couldn't even shower. So all kinds of things are kind of interwoven. And when I'm in it, it's like every piece fits, it all works out. But then my mind goes, what about this possibility? That's just as valid as this other possibility. But for some reason, whatever my mind latched onto, it was like that was the ultimate truth. That was. If I could figure out, one more piece of the puzzle, that was going to solve it all, it would all be realized. So this was this kind of grandiose thinking about if I could just figure out the world. So this particular person was picked up in a liquor store in Portland. And he had been spending quite a lot of time, and the store owner could tell there was something obviously seriously wrong with him. He was reading the label on the back of a Jack Daniel's bottle. And it wasn't the small one. It was, and not the big one, it was the middle one. Okay, so it was that in-between size bottle. So he was reading the label. He goes, I knew if I could figure out the code in the small print in the back of the Jack Daniel's bottle, I'd figure out the meaning of life. So this is this puzzle that he's talking about here in this quote. And when I listen to the recordings back, as you're the researcher, you're not supposed to say a word, right? But when I heard him say that, I said, well, most people try to find the meaning of life from inside the Jack Daniel's bottle. And so that's obviously not the most helpful thing that I could have said as a researcher. When I listened to that, I thought, oh my gosh. But he was so intent. And he went on to say later, he said, I know that there's not a code on the back of a label of a Jack Daniel's bottle. But I still wonder. So the impact of what was going on cognitively during the psychotic episode is, it's really profound. Saying the wrong thing. I hadn't talked to anybody for about a year. I didn't want to talk to people because they might think there was something wrong with me. Something in my brain chemistry didn't let me talk. I get sick of watching my mouth all the time. At first it was hard to take pills because I was afraid I would say something wrong. So let's talk about that. A lot of people don't understand the context of this statement. So when a person is given medication, the nurse will say, okay, what's the name of this pill? Do you know what it's for? Do you know how many milligrams? Do you know what the side effects are? And that's too many questions. But we're all guilty as nurses of asking this of our people. And so in his mind, I wouldn't take the medicine because afraid I would say something wrong. So it's so interesting, again, to understand and appreciate that internal lived experience. So this person said it takes a lot of energy to manage the voices. Sometimes it's more difficult than other times. So it's all about trying to relax. It's just a lot of work just to go from moment to moment without going off the deep end, I guess. This person had actually gotten sick in high school, and she got kicked out of the house. She ended up being homeless on the streets. She ended up being sexually assaulted. And the only person that would ever speak to her after she'd become sexually assaulted was a grandmother. It's just really, really hard when you listen to her story. So here's our young man whose mom was with the system. He said, I would lay in my room all day and just look at the ceiling. I wouldn't watch TV, wouldn't listen to the radio, and wouldn't listen to music. My mom said the day I actually stayed out here in the kitchen because I was interviewing them at home and watched TV with them and actually laughed at something. They knew it was getting better. So that was I think that's pretty insightful. So he was a couple of years past that first episode when I did my interview. Participant 7 says it takes energy. It feels like it's never going to end. It just keeps going. I had trouble concentrating and trouble getting up and reading and stuff, and part of me was hoping there was no appointments for the day, you know. So those are the comments for these first 2 phases. We'll pick up the next phase in the next module. See you soon.